Holly Rowling.
And we're with
Rhea Gaines.
And she is with Legacy Lending. She is one of our lenders we like to use. And you are joining us on Coffee Time. We have a new team name now. It is Rockstars Florida Mid-South Realty.
Yep. So thank you for joining this morning.
My pleasure.
I appreciate it. We're outside the Yellow Deli here in Pulaski. We're actually going to do it inside and they happen to be closed. So we are just going to have this business meeting outside in the cold. So I apologize for that.
Just ignore the shivering.
Yeah. So we're going to ask Rhea a few different questions, just kind of get the lender side of things. And so, well, just dig in. So tell me a little bit about your the different loans like FHA, USDA, conventional, just kind of highlight all of those things.
Sure. So each program, there's some differences that can happen, but the basics are there's conventional, which generally has to have a higher credit score, normally around a 700 for that program. That one you can put either 3% down if you're a first-time home buyer, 5% down, up to 20% down to get rid of the mortgage insurance. Looking for a fairly good job history. We're always looking for 2 years if possible, without any gaps. If there are, we can explain it, but that's just kind of where we start. And then there's FHA. That requires 3.5% down. The credit score there is normally about 620. Same thing, looking for 2-year history if you've got it. And then there's USDA for rural development areas. That pretty much covers, I think, almost all the
Pretty much all of our area that we live in. Yeah.
And that one can be 0% down. Again, we're looking for a 620. I do have a lender that will do an FHA with a 600 or even less. But there's extra cost to do it. So it's always best if we can get you over the 620 with the 2-year income.
And then there's something I've seen before, 580. But
Yeah.
that's like really a lot more higher interest rate, right?
It's a higher interest rate and there's gonna be a higher closing cost.
Okay.
That just, it goes up the window. We can do it.
Yeah.
It's just more expensive.
Yeah. It's kind of more expensive in the long run.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
Okay, what about VA?
And then there's VA. So, and VA is for our veterans. That one we can do with 0% down. We can do that with, normally about a 620 credit score. And each program kind of has its pros and cons.
with the VA, how much percent down do they have to usually be on the VA?
We can do a 0. It just kind of depends on what they've got. We have to look at their certificate of eligibility, and there's some stuff we've got to look into to see what works for them.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's something they need to make sure they have with the VA, that certificate of eligibility. And who do they get that from?
They call the VA to get it.
They call the VA to get it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. What is the most common question you get asked from a buyer?
So normally when a buyer calls, their biggest question, which makes a lot of sense, is how much can I get approved for and what is that monthly payment going to look like? And then, then they ask, is there going to be any closing costs? Are those different from a down payment?
Down payments, yes.
Those types of things, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's my lane, is talking about the numbers.
Right. Why she's here, giving you the information.
Yeah.
Okay, so being on your side of things, being on the mortgage lending side, how do you think the market is right now, buying and selling?
It is still really hot. I don't see it slowing down. I listen to a couple different podcast speakers that have been in this world for 20, 30 years that, at this point have made billions of dollars in this. And from what I'm hearing from them and from what I'm seeing day to day is that there's still a large majority of people putting some good sized down payments down. There's still people paying cash. I don't see this market cooling off much, if at all. So everybody that's coming in to buy, I am seeing interest rates go up. So I'm encouraging them, if you're thinking of buying, this is a good time to get in, to look. I still feel like a house is a really strong investment.
Right.
It's a really good place to put your money.
Well, speaking of that, what are the interest rates like right now? Did you happen to look at it by any chance?
I didn't look this morning. This week they've gone up. So pretty much from Christmas on, they've just been sneaking up. We do still see some dips. So normally if I've got a contract, we'll kind of watch and try to lock somebody in when there's a dip. Some of the lenders that we work with will kind of give us a heads up and go, hey, if you've got anybody that you haven't locked, this is a good time to do it. The next week looks like it's going to be pretty volatile. So they have gone up. I'm still seeing some stuff in the 3s. Most people, when I'm quoting them to get them just kind of an average, I'm quoting it a 4.5.
Oh wow, that's like come up with because you know last year we were looking at like around 2.5.
I know.
So man, that's really. But then you still can't beat it. I mean, we talk about this on the radio a lot. Is with interest rates from back years ago when I first bought my house.
Yeah.
We were like at 9-10% interest rate. So it's like what you can get now for. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah, don't let I feel like with a lot of buyers, don't let the interest rates discourage you with them going up. I feel like if, just like what you said, if you were thinking about buying, let's talk, let's get you locked in. You know, it's still a really, really good time to buy.
I mean, because the market's going to continue to grow.
Right. Absolutely.
I mean, because what you buy right now is going to be worth more 2 years down the road.
And you can always pay more, and you can always pay it off soon.
Right.
You know, I love talking to my buyers and saying, hey, let's talk about that mortgage payment. Let's talk about putting more towards principal. Let's talk about what that could look like if you pay it off faster. And so that's always an option.
Yeah, and that's something that I know that your company does sometimes. Y'all do that financial piece, and y'all talk a lot, and you're doing your financial piece course. And so I think that's really good to get people just in the knowledge of how to make better money choices and investments. Because
I think that's amazing.
because unfortunately, they touch on it at school now. They do better now than what they used to be. I mean, I slept through economics class. I'll be honest.
I actually remember mine was pretty thorough in school. You know, we had to learn how to write a check, and
really?
I remember like learning how to write a check, and like I think we even did like these spreadsheets, and like it was pretty thorough.
Yeah. No.
So I feel like they
somebody brought
in that department lately.
Yeah, somebody brought a pillow and a blanket. I kid you not, to class.
Oh my gosh.
Everybody. I woke up one time because I had it first period, and I woke up one time and I looked around the classroom. Everybody's sound asleep in the class. The teacher's up there reading from the book. He never stopped it, never missed a beat, but the whole class is snoozing.
Oh, man.
All right. Let's
get back on track now.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So why do you think the pre-approval letter is important to have?
Oh my gosh.
While you're house shopping.
It's so important. I have people all the time, and real estate agents will call me and they'll go, hey, so-and-so wants to put it off on this house. Can you get them pre-approved? And sometimes the answer is yeah. I mean, so to be honest, I can look through documents and pull credit. If it's simple, it might be an hour or so before I can get a response back. Like, that's ideal.
Right.
But sometimes people, they just don't know what's on their credit report. They are like, oh, I think I can afford this. The online payment says this, and I can make that payment. But it might not work with what your income has been, or how long you've been on a job, or something that's on your credit report that you don't know about. And so the faster you can talk with me or with any lender and go through all of that and just have that all looked at, the better.
Right.
And so I don't always pull credit immediately. I mean, if they just have questions, let's just talk through it. Let's look through Credit Karma. Let's kind of get a ballpark.
Yeah.
I can't officially write a letter until I've pulled credit, but we can kind of get started without ever doing that.
Yeah, it gives me a general idea. I mean, everybody's like, oh my gosh, it's going to hit my credit. As soon as you pull that credit, it's going to drop your credit a little bit. It doesn't drop it.
No, it's just a couple points.
So, pre-approval on our end, it's not something we have to obviously require to show you a property. It's just more, we don't want you to get excited about a $400,000 house and you can only afford $175,000.
Yeah.
So it's more just, it's just a good thing to have going in, so you
know
where you're at.
Yeah, it makes our job easier, and it makes you a little bit happier to know where you're at.
Yeah, absolutely.
I hate having to tell somebody, no, I can't do that. When you've fallen in love with something.
Yeah, so we want to keep from that.
Yeah.
So my last question for you before Holly wants to ask you some things. So speaking of buyers, will the credit report that the buyer has obtained be good through at least the proposed closing date?
So when we pull it, it's good for about 90 days. Okay. So if we pull it and you find a house and we get through the whole process, it'll be fine.
Perfect.
The process from start to finish, once you have a contract till closing, is normally about 30 to 45 days. So if we pull your credit and you find a house within a month or two, we shouldn't have to pull it again.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so my kind of couple of questions here, because we already answered one. What's a typical down payment that you kind of see that majority of everybody does? Kind of what does that kind of look like?
Most people, I would say, are either doing the 3.5% or the 5% down. I would say that's what I'm seeing most of the time. Most people call and they want the 0%, and so that's almost always where we start. But the debt to income ratio on that one is a lot lower, and so when people call, that might not be the best fit for everybody. And you guys know that having that USDA isn't always the strongest offer. And so sometimes going to either 3.5% or 5% down is better. I would say the majority of the loans I'm doing right now are those. I do have people that put 20 and 50% down,
Oh, that must be
which is great.
Yeah.
That's really nice.
I mean, if I always encourage people, if you're in that position, let's do it.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I would think that would be a really smart move. I mean, just it lowers your monthly payment and you pay it off quicker.
And if you put that 20% down, then you don't have that private mortgage insurance, and so it saves you that every month.
So, I mean, how much is usually, do you know about how much primary mortgage insurance usually runs?
It depends on the loan type.
Yeah.
So with the rural development, it's a lower percentage. With the FHA program, it's a higher percentage. And then if it's conventional, it depends on their interest rate and their credit score.
Okay. All right.
So it can vary, but it's in, when I quote somebody their monthly payment, it's already in there.
It's already in there?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Let's talk appraisals.
Yeah.
Because you deal with that
Oh my
all
gosh.
the time.
Appraisals.
So, how much do they usually run price-wise? Because people ask me all the time, well, how much is an appraisal usually, how much does that usually run?
Right, yeah. So appraisals in our office, if it's a property that is not super weird, right? Like a property that's out in the middle of nowhere, that's a log cabin. If I feel like an appraiser is going to find comps for that house.
Yeah.
Normally between $550 and $650. We need to put a rush on it. It's a little bit more. And then there's always the chance that they're going to be called back out for a final inspection. So $550 to $650 is pretty normal. Final inspection, if that has to happen, is normally about $200.
Okay. So they're looking at possibly up to $800 total on appraisal if that has to go into that.
Yeah. In our office, that gets paid out of the closing cost. So people will write a check, we'll hold that check in the office, but we don't cash it. As long as we close, we get reimbursed out of the closing cost, and that money never leaves their account.
Oh, I did not know that. That's a good thing to know.
Yeah, so that's how our office does it.
Okay. Let's see. I think I might be. Oh, how much about closing costs? What's typical percentage-wise closing costs are you seeing?
Normally about 3% is what I kind of just ballpark it with to get started.
We're kind of seeing that some places are starting to creep up. We're starting to see a little bit more like 4 and even 5% now.
Yeah. There's a couple that I've done recently, and a lot of times with that, if I'm seeing those higher interest rates, it's probably because we're buying those rates down a little bit. So they're paying a little bit more up front for a cheaper rate, and they're paying that in closing costs.
Okay.
So
that's a good thing to know.
Yeah. So for some people that works really well, because we can run the numbers and look and see. Okay, well, if you pay an extra $500 or $1,000 right now, if you stay in that house for 2-3 years, you're recouping that cost, and then your monthly payment's less.
That is smart.
So if they have that money for those closing costs, it's not a good best fit for everybody. But we like to give that as an option to our buyers to say, do you want to do this, or do you want to just stick with where you are with the closing costs? Like, what's more comfortable for you right now?
Right.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so, I know there's different programs to help with closing costs, like THDA. I mean, we've talked about that many times, where THDA can be used for down payment or closing costs. And so that's just another program that I think people need to be aware of that's out there for that assistance to kind of help them, to kind of get them in a house. Right. When they maybe don't have as much money put back. So, okay.
The best thing, save every penny you can. Stay in your job. Do not leave your job.
Don't go buy that new car.
No.
Definitely don't change jobs. We've had that literally
so many times.
Yeah, at the very last minute, like, no, don't do that.
Yeah. Talk to us before you do any of that.
Yes.
But yeah, stay in your job. Save every penny you have. It just makes the process less stressful. So, we can do stuff. I have people move in houses where they pay absolutely zero. I mean, they move in the house, they don't have to bring a penny to the table. But I mean, there's still moving costs, there's still inspections, there's still stuff. So the more you have saved up, the better.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yep. I think that's great. Well, Rhea, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Rhea Gaines with Legacy Lending, everyone. Really appreciate you being on our coffee time.
Sure. Yep. Thank you, and we're gonna go enjoy some Yellow Deli now.
Yep. Bye, guys.
Bye.
See you next time.